Welcome to Programming with Qt Widgets. Had this been a regular in-person class, I would have said, enjoy your lunch. Because now would be the time where we were done with this section. But I added 2 more episodes to this section, 2 episodes that are in our huge catalog of optional topics that you usually do not get to in a regular 3, 4, 5-day class simply because it's packed with other stuff. But hey, it doesn't cost anything to put it online here. So here we go. The first episode is about validating input. Don't you just hate it when you sit there with your new Microsoft Word package and you need to type in the serial number from the box and it just doesn't work? And 10 minutes down, you realize, oh, it actually was an uppercase X, not a lowercase x. Okay, I admit that example didn't age very well, but nevertheless, sometimes you have some input where there is a pattern to it. And that's where today's episode will be useful. We have 2 tools in our toolbox for this. First of all, we have QValidators, which I'll talk about in a while, and then we have input mask. And if you need to read the slide, pause me now. And then I will be just showing the input or the dialog box down here. What is really, truly important here is to realize that there is a pattern to each of these 3 things. So the first one here is an IP address. An IP address is a number from 0 to 255. And the ISO date, well, there is no February 30th, for example. And finally, the license number down here might be something that needs to be in uppercase, all of it. And that's what our input mask is all about. And let me just admit up front, I have never ever done this myself. I don't think I have ever created an input mask, but I think that reflects badly on me rather than on the input mask itself. It was a bit of an afterthought that came with Qt, but hey, what you see is that you create your input mask by simply setting an input mask on the line edit in question, and the input mask part that we're missing here, unfortunately, is a QString. So no fancy classes or anything. It's just a QString. And the format of the QString is somewhat obscure, but understandable nevertheless. So first of all, the QString can be a number of characters. Each character represents one input character in your string. I will show you on the next slide what those characters can be. And then it can end the QString in a semicolon and then another character. And that other character is what is blank represented as. So here you can see an underscore. That is the character for that blank. And down here you see a hash mark. That's the character for the blank there. Okay, so welcome to the world of obscureness. This is the character string that you have. So if the character, and just go back again here, down here it could not be numbers, for example. It could just be A to Z. Up here it could only be numbers, but that is what you specify here. So if it is required, then it should be a capital A. If it's that character range here. If it's optional, then it should be lowercase a. If it's a number or a character, then N. If it's just a number, then 9 or 0. And if it's a number from 1 to 9, so not 0, then 1 to 9. And if it's a number and a plus sign or a minus sign, then hash mark. And anything that goes is an X or an X. And also, if we go back here again, if I tried typing a lowercase a here, then it would insert an uppercase A. And that is these characters greater than means that from now on and for the rest of the string, anything I type in will be uppercased, and less than mean anything will be lowercased, and exclamation mark means ignore what we had before. So all in all, my string for my IP addresses would look like a number of zeros here with the capital or the actual dots in here that I would not type, and then for the license number, what it was, a number of A's, meaning that it was, let me check it up, A was required, and there was an greater than sign there saying, hey, uppercase everything, and the semicolon and the hash mark. Let me show you an example. Wait, Jesper. You said that 0 or 9 for a digit, but the IP numbers, they are only from 0 to 255. How do you specify that you can only type 1, 0, or 2 at the first of that 3-digit octet there? What? You can't? So what is the value of all of this? Yeah, I admit this input mask felt a bit like an afterthought that came along in one of the earlier Qt versions. We have this other thing called a validator. And the validator, as you'll also see in the example that comes up now, is actually the one that limits it to the actual number. So there's a bit of both of them limiting. So the part that I think that the input mask is most useful for is showing you the underscore or the hash mark and the dots that you do not type in your input for IP numbers. That's what I was trying to say. But let's see the example. So first, running the example here, you can see the input number. I could specify 999. No, I couldn't, because there's a validator. But you can see if I specify 1, 2, 3, and I move my cursor away so you can see it, 1, 2, 3, it jumps over that period. So that's a facility that otherwise will be somewhat hard to implement in Qt. Now, let's go down and look at the application. So let me just run again so that you have it here side by side. I am creating an instance of Qt application. You've seen that a number of times. And I'm setting up a font here. And the reason why I set up a font to be mono type or monospace is that if I didn't do that, then the whole thing would jump, because the one is shorter in width than the underscore. And if I type down here an M in the serial number, then M would be wider than the hash mark. And that would look somewhat weird. So we set up a monospaced font. And the way that the style size hint here works is that if it doesn't find monospace, then it'll find something that is called, that matches this. So I could just have, let's just for the fun of it, we just have asked for R, and let's try it again. And nevertheless, compiling. Gee, that takes a long time. There we are. Nevertheless, you'll see that it is still mono-spaced. So that's the first part. Okay, I create my IP address here, and I set the font, and now I set the input mask to 000.000 and so on. And I create this validator. And we'll talk about the validator in a few slides, and then I'll get back to it. My ISO date matches this format, and the license key matches this format. And again, see the greater than. If I go back to my example here, if I type a lowercase, you have to trust me that I typed a lowercase a in, and it got uppercase. And we can try and just modify it here. So now, my OBS Studio is obviously spending a lot of CPU time recording my ugly face. Maybe I should sit still. Oh, there it is. Okay, so now I type here A, and you see it was capitalized here, and it was lowercase down there. That was because the capitalized, lowercase, and I could even add it an exclamation mark here to say do not do any of the above. I am adding the widgets to the layout. I'm showing and I'm executing. No surprises there. Let me give you a free advice. If you have a friend that brews beer, run. Brewing beer is hard. Unless that you are using Braumeister, which is a tool, like a physical tool, like a brewing machine with an embedded board on top of it that Keydap helped develop. It's an interesting story. Follow the link here for a showcase. As I said before, the input mask has a limitation to what you can represent. And an IP number, it cannot. You can only say that this digit should be between 0 and 9, not that it can only be 0, 1, or 2 if it's the first digit, or it can only be 0 to 5 if it's the third digit and the first 2 was 2, 5. That you need a validator for. Fortunately, we do have validators in Qt, and we actually have a number of different validators. But first of all, where do you use your validators? You use your validators most noticeable on a line edit, or one of those few that has a line edit built in, namely a spin box and a combo box where you can type stuff in. And what happens is that when you type something in a line edit, before it actually shows up so your eyes can see it, it will go to the validator associated with that line edit and say, is this okay? And the validator can say, not a good idea. You cannot type the letter 3 at the very first position because that would mean 300 and something, which is not a valid IP address. So we have 3 different built-in validators. We have int validator, allowing only integers, double validators, allowing doubles, and finally, we have QRegular expression validator, where if you can represent what you want as a regular expression, then that would be good enough. I wouldn't be up for writing a regular expression for specifying the IP number ranges, but in that situation, what you do is simply subclass from QValidator yourself and implement 1 or 2 methods from the superclass. The first one is called validate, and the validate method must answer one of 3 things. It can answer, yep, this is okay, everything is fine. It can answer, no, you cannot add the letter 3 here or the number 8 here at that position in your validator. Or it can say, okay, you typed 1 dot, that would be an okay result for the user to press enter on if you add a bit more. And that's the state of intermediate. And if you are in the intermediate state, then when the user presses enter, before the return press signal is being emitted, the validator actually get a chance to look at it once again and see if it can fix it up. So if it said 1 dot, the validator could fix it up by adding a 0, so it was 1.0, or removing the dot so it was just 1. I have an example of such a custom validator, so let's see that now. So here we have a subclass of QValidator for an IP validator, and if I just scroll down here, you'll see that on my IP edit, I set my validator to be this new IP validator that prints out there. Okay, you need to remember that IP numbers are 4 segments of 3 digits each, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm going through these 4 segments here, and I'm just picking out each of the digits here, I, J, and K, in each of these. And then this is the magic that tests that the first digit can only be, or if the first digit is more than 2, then it's invalid. If the first digit is 2, then it can only be more than 5, or cannot be more than 5 as the second digit, and so on here. And that's if that's the case where it's invalid. If any of the 3 were not okay, that meant that I tried to convert the digit of position 1, 2, or 3, but it didn't convert as a number, then that tells me that I am not done typing in, and I'll emit the intermediate. And finally, otherwise, I'll return acceptable. And you can see down here, I print out that my line edit here, whenever I press return, then it will print out here that the IP address was this or that. And you can see I'm typing in here 1, 2, 3. Let me try and press return now. You heard it right? Yeah, nothing comes out of it. Okay, 9. Okay, not a good idea. A, not a good idea. 3. No. Okay, 2. That worked out. Okay, 6. Still not working. 5. Okay, good. 6. Not working. 5. Okay. And so my validator is working. And now that I filled them all out, I can press enter and it will emit the signal return pressed, bringing out this here. Not again. Yeah. What? What the green arrow, the green line that means? Yeah, that means that I just realized that I forgot to check the intermediate state. But hey, good for you that I finally got that fixed in the training material. What? Yes, the error message up here is actually from Clazy. If you don't know about Clazy, well, there is an episode on Clazy. It's a God-given tool, Client-ID and Clazy. Get them working with your application. This example here, sure, I should have added Q_object, but after all, it's just a simple example to show a validator. So that was a validator. It was input mask, but wait, there's more. There's also a class called QCompleter. The idea with QCompleter is that you have a fixed set of items to choose from. So say all the countries in the world. You could provide your user with a combo box for choosing that, or a list widget or list view for choosing that. But imagine that it was for choosing a name for your newborn son. In contrast to countries where there's a give and take 200 of them, names could be hundreds of thousands of possible names across the world. And to choose Jesper as the name of your newborn son, which seems like a good one, you would have to scroll all the way down to J, which would be super annoying. So in that situation, what you can do instead is to provide a line edit where the user can just type in, and then you will provide suggestions from a list box that drops down, just like a combo box, or in a few other ways. Let me show you an example for that. The key part of this example is this line edit down here where I can choose a country, and it could be DE. You can see as I type, it will narrow it down to whatever country that I want. I could also try typing with a lowercase d, but see, lowercase d do not match because it has this property, whether it should be case sensitive or not. Now it does match. So that's one property. The key thing about the completer is that you can specify a few different modes. So here's the filtered pop-up completion. That's this, that it will show me only those matching DE. I could also do an unfiltered. So now I'll go DE and it'll show me those that matches DE, but it will scroll the lists, as you can see, down to the first match here. And finally, I have one inline completion. So DE, and now I don't have a way of scrolling that list. I need to provide the full one. Sometimes the line edit could be, the land of Jesper. That one I could provide myself. So whether I can provide new ones or not can obviously be customized too. Now, the wraparound, I have no idea what that does. Please add to the comments below if you figure out what it does. I looked at the documentation. It says, well, do we wrap around the completions or not? I can't see what it does. There are two ways to provide, and just show you the code for this example here. There are two ways of providing. Let's just go and look at the completer. There's two ways of providing the data to the completer, namely either using a QString list. So if you have a list of all the countries in the world, then you can do that, or using a QAbstract item model. And we'll talk much more about QAbstract item models later on. But the QString list is if you already have it. The QAbstract item model is if it's super difficult for you to get the complete list up front, possibly, or, well, that's for a later discussion. And the wraparound, as I said, it says, this property holds the completion wrap around when navigating through items. Yes, that did not make me any the wiser. Okay. what does it look here? My user interface, I'm setting up, blah, 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 blah. I am connecting a few change signals to the part of the user interface for this. I am searching for my completer. Here's my label for the country, my line edit, my completer. I create my new completer. I give it a parent, and then I say edit. That's my line edit. Set completer with this completer, and now it's working. And as you could see, the other, I can modify my completer. So change completion mode. I can change that on the fly on the completer. Not that I would usually do that, but that's a possibility. And this down here is where I read in the set of countries. I read it in from a resource file, and hey, what a perfect bridge. Because that is exactly what the next episode is going to be about, resource files. And until then, have a great time. Yeah, seriously, that was it. We saw the input mask that could provide some visual indication, but not provide the full set of limiting input. We saw the QValidator, which did exactly that. And finally, we now saw the completer. And if you're interested in more about completer, I actually had a episode in Qt Widgets and More where I implemented a combo box that would allow me to write ASCII versions of UTF-8. So the Danish letter Ø, which is an O with a slash through, you could type that as an O instead. That is from Qt Widgets and More. If you stay here and wait for a day's time, another episode will materialize talking exactly about resources. Until then, have a great time and enjoy life.